Welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of the Fifth Quarter Podcast. I'm your host, Marcus Jones, the Bluff City Cowboy, coming to you live from Memphis, Tennessee. And we are in the last official week of NFL preseason. Next week, we will be kicking off the regular season. So before we get into regular season mode, we're going to do a quick breakdown of the 53-man roster. As you guys know, the roster was finalized this morning, and a lot of interesting moves were made. So we're going to take a look back at what we said last week in terms of how the 53-man roster will be composed, and we're going to look at what actually happened. We're going to talk a little bit about what the differences are, and we're going to talk about some of the players chosen to be on the team. We'll take a quick look at the practice squad also, and then we'll get ready for some football on next Thursday. So before we get started, I see the views are going up pretty quickly. So let's get those likes to match the views. So if you're watching right now, please hit that like button. Make sure you hit like, make sure you hit love, even hit hate. We take all the engagement that we can get, but let's get those views to match the engagement. Also, if you haven't done so already, be sure to go to the DC4L Facebook groups. There are two of them. There's a public group and there's a private group. Make sure you guys join those groups. We're gearing up for the regular season, so there's going to be a lot of great information provided in those groups. Also going to be a lot of giveaways throughout the season. If you don't have cable and you want to watch games, we do have some options for you to be able to watch the games as well in this new subscription-based season that we're in with the NFL. So a lot of great things come out of those groups. Make sure you join both DC4L groups. Also, go over to YouTube, find DC4L on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, also hit that bell. And while you are on YouTube, be sure to go find me at Bluff City Cowboys. Hit that subscribe button for me also. I'm going to put the link in the comments. So you guys, if you get a chance, you can go over there and hit that link. And Amanda, who's the creator of DC4L, she's already stated, if you guys help me get to 1,000, she will be giving away a signed Cowboys jersey. So make sure you guys go over, hit that subscribe button, help both of our pages get over to 1,000, and we'll get you guys, one of you lucky winners, one of those jerseys. Before we get started, one more thing. If you haven't done so already, be sure to share this broadcast. There are a lot of Cowboys groups out there. A lot of them don't have Cowboys podcasts that air. A lot of podcasts are pretty much doing the same thing. We try to be a little bit different here at the Fifth Quarter Podcast because it is definitely fueled by Cowboys Nation. So your questions, your comments, keep the show moving. You guys are always great with what you bring up. And I think a lot of the Cowboys Nation needs to hear some of the things that we're talking about. So make sure you take a second and share this broadcast to one of your favorite Cowboys group. You don't have to share it to DC4L because we're already airing live in there, but feel free to choose another Cowboys group and air it there. All right, and while you guys do that, I'll take a few seconds to give some shout outs in the comments. I see we got one of the admins, Cy Witherspoon, joining us. Cy, thank you for tuning in as always. We got one of our regular guests, Jack Meeker, joining us. Jack, thank you for joining as well. Got another regular guest. If you guys watched the show last week, Jeffrey Dunnigan was on the show talking 53-man roster. So, Jeff, thank you for tuning in. I know I'm going to butcher your name. I think it's Ziad or Ziad Anderson. Thank you for joining. We got Frank Pellegrini. I'm assuming it's Pellegrini. Frank, thank you for joining as always. We got one of our sponsors in the comments, Justin Robinson. If you guys are looking for an NFL jersey, this is the only authorized jersey provider that DC4L endorses. Be sure to check his page. He's going to be doing some giveaways throughout the season as well. But if you don't want to take a chance of trying to win a giveaway, you can hit up Justin directly and he'll set you up with a great Cowboys or NFL jersey. See, we got Ronald Tello saying, I miss Billy the Goat Johnson. Don't know what that reference is, but thank you for joining, Ronald. We got Arturo Solorio joining us. Go Cowboys. Thank you for tuning in. Frank, I definitely appreciate the kind words. I do a lot of work behind the scenes, and I hope that I'm putting out a product that you guys appreciate and enjoy. So thank you for that. We got Billy Haley joining us. Thank you, Billy. I appreciate you tuning in as well. We got Roderick Atwood, another admin for DC4L. So, Roderick, thank you for tuning in. We got Ray Dean, another regular joining us. Ray's usually with us quite a bit during the season. So, I see you're coming back a week early. Definitely love the Cook pickup. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. Where Dak money is, I'm starting to lose faith. I'll just leave it at that. You guys know I don't like to talk about Dak on the show, but between the comments that Jerry Jones made and the fact that the season starts next week and there's no deal, I'm really starting to get concerned about whether or not Dak gets a contract. J. Rafa Palacios, thank you for joining in also. Let's see, got everybody else. Carl Studel, thank you for joining. And we definitely got Cook. Well, he's not official yet, I don't think, but all signs indicate that he will be signing with the team on the practice squad. All right, so I think we've done all the shout outs, but don't let it stop there. Feel free to get in the comments. We're going to talk 53-man roster. If you have any questions or comments about the topics or about the season as it's about to kick off, be sure to get in the comments. I try to hit everybody's comment if I can, but if I don't, charge to my head, not to my heart. AJ Bell saying CD better play lights out for that money. I mean, he's been playing well the past 2 years. If you look at CD Lamb, you can tell he's been working. He's definitely gotten bigger. I try not to gauge players based off of videos that they post, but he definitely looks quicker in and out of breaks. He's working on 2 new techniques. I'm really pleased that CD Lamb is the type of guy who's continuing to work on his craft. So I'm hoping that he continues to play up to that big contract he just got. I see we got Charlie joining us with Establish the Pass. So guys, if you don't get your feel of Cowboys talk tonight, be sure to join me tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Central Time. I will be on Charlie's podcast, Establish the Pass, and we will continue our Dallas Cowboys talk along with the 53-man roster, contracts, all of that good stuff in between. Charlie's a really knowledgeable guy, and he's definitely going to give you a unique perspective on his thoughts when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys. So don't miss that show. You can either join on the Bluff City Cowboys YouTube page, or you can find Charlie directly at Establish the Pass. All right. We got Vonda Williams. Thank you for joining. Looks like a new name, so appreciate you tuning in. Okay, guys, let's get into it. Lee Hairston, thank you for joining also, becoming a regular. And R Truth Knowles Jr., thank you for tuning in also. So what I'm going to do tonight, I'm going to put up what we projected last week, and then I will put up what actually happened on the 53-man roster. We got a lot of these positions right, to be honest. And the ones that are different, you guys got any questions about why you think a guy was chosen over another guy? I'm going to give my thoughts, but if you guys have thoughts or questions, feel free to put those in the comments as well. Jack Meeker says, surprised we didn't trade Washington for a Vanilla Gorilla, which is John Ridgeway III, defensive tackle out of Arkansas. For you diehard draft guys, we did draft him in 2022. He only lasted 1 season. We cut him. The Commanders picked him up last year, And then this year, the Commanders traded him. I can't remember what team they traded him to, but another big defensive tackle, very good against the run. The reason I say we didn't trade for him, Jack Meeker, is for one, we just signed Linval Joseph. So I think he's going to be a major impact to the team. Number two, I think the team really likes the undrafted pick Denzel Daxon. And thank you, Jack Meeker. They traded him to the Saints. I really think they like Daxon. He falls under that international roster spot. So they basically get a free look at him. So he gets a chance to develop on the team for 2 years without taking up a spot. And technically he played 3 years of college ball, but he's treated as an international guy. So that's just one of those loopholes that I think they're taking advantage of. But just like you, I'm shocked they didn't try to trade for him. And there's also a defensive player that they did not retain that we're going to talk about when we get to defensive line. So let's go ahead and get into it. Start off like we always do. We start on offense and go to defense. We go from the back end and work our way forward. So the first position we'll take a look at will be the running back position. And I think this is one of those ones where some of us were surprised and some of us were relieved. So last week, when we did our 53-man roster show, we said that the team would only keep 4 running backs, and those backs would be Zeke, Dowdle, Freeman, and Hunter Lepke. So when the team came out with the roster, they swapped out Royce Freeman and put in Deuce Vaughn. And I see the comments are already starting to blow up with Deuce Vaughn supporters. Let the Deuce loose. Deuce is a valuable asset to the offense by R-Truth. Victor Vega, thank you for joining, says McCarthy got finally taking Deuce out of mothballs. He may be small, but he's fast. Get him out on those screens and in out patterns. Kevin Okerstrom saying, let Deuce play, let Deuce loose. Now, we talked about this last week. We all love Deuce Vaughn. And thank you, Lamar Houston. Appreciate you joining. Derek Sims says Deuce was the right choice. So we all love Deuce. My only concern with Deuce is not that I don't think he can play, because we all watched him at Kansas State. We know he can play. The problem is, will the team use him? And to me, I don't think the team's going to use him. I mean, everything he did this offseason, he did it last offseason. He had several explosive runs. He even scored a touchdown. I think he scored multiple touchdowns last preseason. Exactly. When will we use him? The team is going to have 7 inactive players on a weekly basis. So I tried to go through the roster to see who those 7 inactive players would be. And every time I went through the roster, Deuce Vaughn always came up as one of those inactives. I could not figure out a way for him not to be inactive. And the problem is, he's definitely a great runner. He definitely provides a change of pace. But this team does not use number 3 running backs. They never have. That's the first problem. The second problem is he doesn't play special teams. Now, they tried to put him on kickoff last week, but we all know when it's time to really play ball, that's going to be Turpin. So Turpin's going to be the returner. The second return guy is normally going to be a bigger running back, wide receiver that's used more like a blocker. So I would probably suspect that would be a guy like a Jalen Brooks or maybe a Rico Dowdle or even Hunter Lepke. You never know. That's one of the reasons I thought Royce Freeman may make the roster, because I think he could be that second kickoff guy as a blocker. So he doesn't play kickoff. He doesn't play special teams. He's not going to be the returner. And the team either won't use him for offense or they won't know how to use him for offense. For those reasons, I was shocked he was signed. at least with a guy like a Royce Freeman, he's a special teams player, so he's able to be a weekly active guy. Now, I'm not upset Deuce Vaughn wasn't signed, and I'm still not looking for him to play, especially when you look at the fact that we just talked about signing Dalvin Cook. So if you have a roster with Zeke, Rico, Dalvin Cook being brought up from the practice squad, and Deuce Vaughn, one of those guys is going to get left out. And in my opinion, 10 times out of 10, that guy's going to be Deuce Vaughn. So to me, I like the player. It's a great story. I just don't see how we can fit him in. And Victor, preaching to the choir. And I agree with this 100%. If we weren't going to use him, we should have traded him to someone who is innovative. The same way we did with the tight end, Peyton Hendershot. We don't really use just pure athletic tight ends. People might say John Stevens is an athletic tight end, but he can line up at fullback and block. So we had a guy who's just a pure athlete. You send him to a team who likes athletic tight ends, Kansas City. We should have done the same thing with Deuce. Or we should have taken a chance to cut him and see if we can get him back on the practice squad. And Chris Rodriguez saying you should drop Zeke. Unfortunately, Chris, that's not going to happen. So we gotta roll with the dice that we have. And Jim Young looks like a new name, so thank you for joining. He asked, did Deuce bulk up in the offseason? He probably did, Jim, but there's only so much bulk you can put on a 5'5" frame before it gets overkill. So he may have bulked up a little bit, but there's only so much he can do with the way his body frame is. I would be shocked if he weighs more than 170. And if he ever got up to 180, he would probably look fat and lose some of his speed. Kevin Okerstrom saying Cooks wasn't solid enough to produce in New York or Baltimore. I just don't see him lighting the stage on fire. I don't either, Kevin. I just think they're going to give him an opportunity. And if he does get called up to the roster, it's definitely going to be at the expense of Deuce Vaughn. So I'm not saying to expect a lot out of Dalvin Cook, but if he gets an opportunity, that's definitely going to be the guy who gets the short end. Victor Vega saying, I'm not thrilled with McCarthy making questionable challenges, goes for it at weird times. Well, Victor Vega, luckily for you, he's in the last year of his deal. So after this year, you probably won't see that again. Shane Odom says, do I realize how many draft picks we got next season? Yeah, between the draft picks we have, and then I think we probably have 4 or 5 compensatory picks coming. Most of them are probably 5th or 6th round. We probably will have a lot of draft picks, and more than likely we'll use all of them. We may use a couple to kind of move up and down the draft a little bit, but you can always expect us to draft at least 10 people and a lot of them making the roster. Now, Carl Studel's going on a little rant about Deuce Vaughn, so I'm assuming he's a diehard guy. So I'm just going to say this, Carl. You're a Cowboys fan. You watched Deuce Vaughn last year in preseason. He looked very well. He even had a touchdown. With all the rants that you're doing in the comments, how many times did he touch the ball last year? So don't compare him to Darren Sproles, because Darren Sproles was on a team with a coach who emphasized that type of back. I'm not saying I don't like Deuce Vaughn. You're saying McCarthy is not a fool. Deuce Vaughn was on the team last year and didn't use him. So I don't understand, what do you think is going to change between last year and this year? They don't use small running backs. If they do, it'll be great. But we're here to talk about the truth and not hypotheticals. And the truth is, they don't use small running backs. And even if they did, they can use Turpin in that same way. I see we got Charlie Brown joining us. Charlie, thank you for joining. Appreciate it. D-Mo Jones saying, I feel as people only play well or play good for organizations where they want to be. That could be true, D-Mo Jones. That could be true. All right, guys. Running back position. Everybody's pretty much excited about having Deuce Vaughn on the roster. Let's just hope they use him like they should, and we get to see him on the field at least a little bit. If Dalvin Cook works out, I would probably say no, but if he doesn't, Deuce may get some opportunities. All right, let's keep the show moving. Won't spend a lot of time on this one. Quarterback position, everybody already knew. 1, 2, 3, Dak, Rush, Lance. That's who we picked. Those are the guys who are going to be the quarterbacks. Trey Lance is more than likely going to be the emergency third quarterback every game. So for you guys that are not familiar with the rules, the only reason we're keeping a third quarterback is because the rules changed. And now teams can have a quarterback inactive. But if they have to use them, they can use them. So that little change in the rules does allow teams to keep a third quarterback so they don't end up like, I believe it was Cleveland 2 years ago and another team where they had to end up throwing a wide receiver in at quarterback because the starters got hurt. So we're going to always keep 3 quarterbacks until those rules change. Trey Lance is going to be the third guy. He's going to be a weekly inactive. And if heaven forbid, our top two guys get hurt, he's going to be the guy to come in. So Jeff asked the question, does Trey get any mop-up duty this year? I would probably say no, Jeff. And the reason I say no is because, again, like I just said, the NFL rules state that a team can keep a third quarterback inactive and he can only play if it's an emergency, just like Derek Sims says. He's only for an emergency, and we don't want that to happen. So thank you, Jeff. It was the Broncos. So Trey's going to be an inactive player every week. So more than likely, he will never get to play in mop-up duty time because he's going to be inactive. The only way the team will carry a third quarterback, I take that back. They're never going to have 3 quarterbacks active in a game. The only way Trey will get a chance to play is if one or both of our quarterbacks in front of him get hurt. And hopefully that does not happen. So just like last year, when we played a team like the Giants, when we just knew there was a blowout waiting to happen, the team still didn't have a third quarterback active. The last game of the season, that was essentially meaningless. The team still didn't have a third quarterback active. So if those situations came up last year, I doubt they changed this year. He's going to be the third emergency quarterback unless something catastrophic happens. Billy Haley saying needs a lot of development. Well, he's got another year to develop, Billy Haley, so he's going to have plenty of chances. Victor Vega, I was talking to a Commanders fan the other day, and he was asking me about Dak and Lamb, and he was asking why hasn't our GM signed him. I gave him the exact answer you just gave right here. He's a narcissist, and he thinks he's the best GM. All right. So that's pretty much a quarterback. Let's go ahead to the wide receiver position. And this one was interesting to me. So who we picked last week, we picked 5 wide receivers: Lamb, Cooks, Turpin, Tolbert, Brooks. There was a little bit of debate about who the 5th guy would be, but we all came to the consensus. It would be Brooks. So the team, playing around with the roster like they normally do, they decided to only have 4 wide receivers on the 53-man roster. So that was Cooks, Turpin, Tolbert, and Brooks. Now, technically, because CeeDee Lamb had not officially signed his contract and he did not report to training camp, he was listed. I'm sorry. I forgot to put Flournoy on his list. Flournoy was the 5th one. So because Lamb did not report to training camp and he was not at any practices, he was listed on the did not report list by the Cowboys. So that means until he officially shows up to practice, he does not take a roster spot. Now, when he does show up to training camp or practice, then there's going to be a move that has to be made. So as of right now, CD technically is not on the roster. So question for the comments before we move on. So far, we've gone through quarterback, running back, wide receiver. Typically, when a team has to add a guy, they drop a guy from the same side of the ball. So I'm going to go through tight ends and I'm going to go through offensive line. As I go through these, put it in the comments and let me know what player you think is going to be dropped to make room for CeeDee Lamb. Now, my guess is tomorrow is Thursday. So tomorrow's going to be kind of a walkthrough day. And then Friday, Saturday, kind of start implementing the game plan. I don't expect Lamb to leave the do not report list. Oh, he showed up for practice. Well, showing up for practice and practicing are two different things, Sal Witherspoon. He can show up, but he's not off of the do not report list. So when he is officially on the roster as an active player, let me know what player you guys think is going to be dropped for him. Brian says Deuce. Jay Rafa says Brooks. Charles Brittingham says Brooks also. Victor Vega being funny, saying Dak. Definitely wouldn't happen. So there's definitely going to be a move made in the next couple of days. Somebody's going to have to be dropped off the roster. And Kerry Morris Poe, thank you for clearing that up. You say he has 2 weeks according to the roster and NFL rules. I don't know if it's 2 weeks, but I think when does the season start? So the season starts next weekend. So he has to report before next weekend in order to play. So it's probably closer to a week, but you're right. It's going to be sometime next week. He's going to be added to the roster. Vega saying drop Jerry. Everybody saying Brooks. Jeff says Goodwin. I could see Goodwin as an option. Normally when teams drop a guy, they normally drop a guy off the same side of the ball. But the Cowboys did list Goodwin as a special teams guy and not a defensive guy. So Goodwin is definitely a good choice. Vonda Williams saying Brooks. Everybody's kind of saying Brooks. So yeah, he doesn't count right now, but once they take him off the did not report list, he will count. Okay, so that's the wide receiver position. Martise Thompson saying unpopular choice, Jalen Tolbert. I will probably disagree with that. But Kevin saying, yeah, Goodwin, of course, he's a special teams guy. Because they played around with Goodwin's position, I could see that being an option. And we're going to talk about this later in the show also with the practice squad and why Goodwin would be a good choice. Okay, guys, let's move. Let's keep the show moving forward. We go to the tight end position. So last week, we all pretty much were unanimous that Peyton Hendershot would not be on the 53-man roster, and we were right. So we got Ferguson, Schoonmaker, Stevens. Now, we all love Brevin Spanford. If you guys follow this show, you know during the draft and the undrafted free agency, I talked about him almost weekly. So I was shocked and pleasantly surprised that Brevin Spann-Ford made this roster. And I love John Stevens also. He would have been on the roster last year if not for injuries. So I think we have a very solid tight end group. And thank you, Keystone Cowboy, for joining us. Mike McCarthy loves Brevin. I always love a blocking tight end. He's going to be a core special teams guy. I think he's definitely going to earn his way on the roster. To be honest, I think he may be active more than John Stevens during game days because of his special teams ability. Jerry Holter saying Brevin Spann-Ford or Wheat is who should be dropped, not the receivers who made it. I'm in agreement with you, Jerry. I think if it's not CJ Goodwin, it's probably gonna be Brevin Spann-Ford. Now, I don't think it's Wheat because Wheat last year was probably our third or fourth best special teams player. He didn't do a lot on defense, but he was a monster on special teams. Him, Hunter Lepke, Mukwamu when he was healthy, and of course CJ Goodwin. To me, looking at kickoff return, kick, punt return, those were our four best special teamers. And then if I had to name a fifth, it'd probably be Jalen Brooks. So I think that Wheat will probably have a spot secured on this team for special teams purposes only. Okay. Charlie saying I was shocked and unpleasantly surprised that Ford made the roster. Jack Meeker saying if Schoon wasn't the second round pick, he'd be on the bottom of that list. I think we all kind of agree with you on that one, Jack Meeker. Keystone saying John can't be fumbling in the seams. Well, it's no worse than anything Peyton Hendershot did. So I'll give him a pass on that one. Just hope he doesn't carry that into the regular season. So Kerry Morris Poe clearing things up, saying the Cowboys were granted a 2-week exception and placed on the commissioner's exempt list for CD. So if the season starts the 9th, he's definitely not going to be on there for that game because you can't play and be on the exception list. So I would assume he's going to be on the roster before the regular season game. Martise Craig Thompson saying, hey, we got rid of Hendershot. Hopefully the new guys can step in and make an impact. I think John Stevens is definitely going to make an impact. Not only is he a very athletic tight end, you can also line him up and put him at fullback or H-back or split back. He's an athletic guy. He's a physical guy. He doesn't mind blocking. He runs good routes, and he has decent hands. So I think he's going to be one of those chess pieces that the team plays around with during the regular season. Kevin saying Schoonmaker's the big body, big target tight end that is DC style behind Ferg. We just got to see some consistency with him, Kevin. From height, weight, speed, he definitely looks like he fits the mold. We just got to see more out of him, especially being a second round guy. All right, I see we got Payo fan in here. He's a Payo time. He's a diehard Rams fan. Has a great podcast. You'll see him on the show whenever we play the Rams, and I'll be on his show also. If you guys are interested in learning more about the Rams or the Niners, he talks about the Niners a lot because, of course, they're one of their biggest rivals. So when we get around to Niners time, I'll definitely be checking out his show just to get some intel on the Niners team. And if you guys are diehard football fans like me, be sure you check him out as well. We got Rika Moves the Chain joining us. Rika, thank you for joining. So the question would be, so they knew when they made the cuts for the practice squad, the 88 would be joining. Who doesn't belong? One of these things is not like the other. Rika using one of my favorite lines when I talk about positions in the NFL, because I'm a big component of when you have a bunch of guys who all have similar traits, the guy who stands out is normally the guy who's going to get cut. All right, so Payo time coming in with the question. Do you think this is Dak's final season with the Cowboys? I don't normally like to talk about Dak, but the closer we get to the regular season, the closer I start to feel that way. I personally don't think the money's gonna be ridiculous when he gets out there in free agency, but it's gonna be a big dollar amount. The question will be, will or won't Jerry match it? The only player I have to use as precedence is the defensive end DeMarcus Ware. So DeMarcus Ware, a couple years back, probably almost 10 years ago, left the Cowboys. Jerry told him, go out there. I respect you as a player. Go find the best deal you can. Bring it back to us. We'll try our best to match it. Well, the Denver Broncos gave him a good deal, and Jerry said we can't match it. So DeMarcus Ware was gone. I don't know if that's going to happen with Dak, but we will see. It will probably take absolute minimum 58 a year to sign him. If you believe the reports that came out about CeeDee Lamb, the Cowboys were hard set at 32.5, which would put him just above all the other wide receivers. And CeeDee Lamb's team was dead set on 34, which was just below the highest in the market. And at the last minute, the team came up and matched them. Now, the same thing could happen with Dak, because I'm pretty sure the Cowboys are probably offering him something along the lines of what Herbert and Burrow and Tua have, around 55 and a half. Dak's team is probably a little bit higher than that, and it's probably going to take some arm twisting to get the Cowboys to match. So I think because of the rapport and just the notoriety Dak gets from the Cowboys, I feel like he may give the Cowboys an opportunity to match. The two questions are, one, will the team match? And two, are they going to let negotiations get so contentious that they offend Dak and his team? So those are the two big questions. And I feel like one of those two things are not going to happen, and Dak will probably be gone. I see we got Terry Rudd joining us, a diehard Niners fan. So Terry, if you get a chance, go to YouTube, find Payo time, and when the Rams and Niners play each other, be sure to get in the comments, because he has a great following as well. I think you will really appreciate going back and forth with the Rams and Niners fans when he does his live shows. Carrie Post saying the real question is, who will replace him if we let him go? Carrie, you're preaching to the choir. We'll probably be having this conversation next offseason. I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to go too far into it. All right, so last offensive position. We're at 39 minutes, so we're at good time. Once again, thank you everybody for watching. The comments have been great so far. You guys have really been on it. Let's continue the momentum. Keep those great questions and comments going as we go to the defensive side of the ball. Before we go over there, we're going to talk offensive line. So looking at the offensive line, that's defensive line, my mistake. So on the offensive line, this is who we chose to make the roster last week. And there's a caveat in there. We assumed that Chuma Edoga would be placed on IR. So we chose these 8 players to be the guys who would be picked on the roster. So when the team came out with the roster, surprisingly, Edoga was not on IR. When his injury came out in early August, the projections were he was going to need 4 to 6 weeks to recover. So if it was 6 weeks, that would take us to week 3 of the regular season. If it's the 4-week projection, that takes us to week 1. So I'm assuming because they did not put him on IR, that means his recovery is closer to the 4-week timeline, and he'll probably be available week 1 or at the least week 2. So he made the 53-man roster. And I see Jeff Dunnigan and John Murray both about to hit the same thing I was about to discuss. I don't know why we kept Matt Waletzko. If you look at the roster as it currently stands, we have Terrence Steele and Tyler Guyton, of course. If we needed a tackle, Tyler Smith could go out the tackle. Asim Richards is a tackle. Chuma Edoga is a tackle. So we have 2 backup tackles in Richards and Edoga. Why do we also need Waletzko? Because I did not see Waletzko play left tackle in the preseason. He only played right tackle. So if he's only a right tackle, Richards and Edoga could do that. So why are we keeping Waletzko to be a backup right tackle? The move didn't make sense to me. The only thing that I can think of is they drafted him in the 4th round, and Jeff, he could be the cut piece. You never know. Keystone, Matt Waletzko as our backup right tackle is nasty work. 100% agree. Especially considering we got Edoga and Richards who could possibly go to right tackle if needed. Now, Jack Mika, this one didn't bother me as much because it's practice squad and you have to have a lineman on the practice squad. But like you just pointed out, if something happened, we could always bring Ball up from the practice squad and he could play tackle. So the Matt Waletzko pick was kind of head scratching. The only thing I can think of is he's in year 3. He's dealt with injuries for the past 2 years. The team still feels like they can squeeze another ounce of talent out of him, and they're giving him one more chance with a fully healthy season. That's the only thing I can think of. Or like Jeff said, he could be the cut piece. We'll find out in the next couple of weeks. Terry Rudd said, I like Guyton, but he can be a little stiff at times. I don't see that. I don't see that in Guyton. One thing I don't see is stiffness. I do see bad technique, but I think he's a very fluid mover. Keystone saying, once again, we're still lacking on the right side of the O-line. Yeah, I still don't get the Waletzko move. Payo time, ask a question, and we'll talk about that in a minute once we get to defense. All right, we're at 45 minutes. The views are still going steady. So thank you guys for that. Definitely appreciate you guys tuning in, joining the show, talking about the 53-man roster. I see the likes are also higher than the views, so appreciate that also. Make sure before the show ends, you guys go hit that link in the YouTube, hit the link in the comments, go to my YouTube, hit that subscribe button, help me get to 1,000 subscribers. And let's get back into the show because I don't want to hold you guys too long. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball where we will go with the defensive line and talk about some of these interesting moves that were made. So the first one we'll go to is who we picked to make the roster last week. So as you guys can see, Linval Joseph had not signed when the show aired, so we did not have him as an option. But we did have the team keeping 9 defensive linemen, including Carl Lawson. And Kerry Morris Poe, thank you. I appreciate that, sharing it in your Cowboys group. Make sure you send me a DM, Kerry, so we can connect. And maybe at some point during the season, we can have you come on the show, or we can do some type of collaboration. Rika saying, I'm hoping Steele got some core strength back. The injury made him lose a little bit going into the season. Yeah, it definitely showed in his gameplay last year, Rika. Jack Meeker saying, can't believe we left Rodgers hanging to get sniped. So since you mentioned that, we'll go to who actually made the team. So there were 9 defensive linemen who made the team. So they took out Justin Rogers and put in Linval Joseph. They also added Tyrus Wheat, who, like I mentioned before, was a defensive end, but he played heavily on our special teams last year. And yeah, thank you for that, Kevin. Carrie, please post your Facebook group in the comments so we all can go check that out. And you said the name of the group is Dallas Cowboys Daily. So also, after the show, after you go and subscribe to my YouTube channel, go on Facebook and find Dallas Cowboys Daily. Go join that group and let's see what Carrie and her group are talking about. Because I'm pretty sure, based off the comments she's made, that there's going to be a lot of good content in there. So Terry Rudd saying Linval Joseph, one of my favorite interior D linemen. Mine also. I'm just hoping and praying it's not a Dontari Poe situation where we signed him a year too late and he became a open swinging gate. So I'm hoping he has one more year in him. Yeah, Keystone. Justin Rogers and Cincy, they picked him up. Interestingly, he signed to their practice squad. So I'm assuming somebody must have made him some promises that they didn't keep, or he was just offended that they didn't sign him to the active roster and said, you know what, even though I clear waivers, I can go to whatever team I want. I'm not going back to Dallas. Third option could be he took a look at our roster, and we look at it right now. You've got Mozzie Smith, who's a first-round pick. You've got Linval Joseph, who's a Mike Zimmer guy. So you know Mike Zimmer loves him. You got Jordan Phillips, who's been here for a couple of weeks, made a little bit of an impact. Maybe he saw that if he came to our practice squad, there may not be enough room for him ever to get a chance to make the roster, because we do also have Denzel Jackson on the practice squad also. So maybe he saw more opportunities in Cincinnati. You never know. So Tyrus Wheat, Keystone saying what he do. He was a pretty important special teamer last year. Special teams does matter. When you look at this team, particularly the defensive line position, there's a lot of veterans. And I have a rule of thumb. Every position needs to have one special teamer in order to have a good special teams unit. So when I look at this roster, it could possibly be Nealon, but I think they're going to rely heavily on him. So because of that, if we don't have Wheat on the roster, we don't have a special teams contributor from our defensive line group. So I feel like because of that, he may stay on the roster unless we end up seeing Nealon be more active in that group. So Jeff tells me that Wheat will be a piece they play with as far as cutting. That could be an option also, but I really think they're going to keep him here for special teams purposes. Shane Odom saying, I think D-Law will be fighting for his position this season. He's getting long in the tooth. Shane, he's also in the last year of his deal, so more than likely he won't be here also. So I think he's definitely going to be fighting not only for his position on the team, because if they don't think he's going to be here next year, they will try to transition Nealon into that spot. He's also going to be playing for his next deal, because I think he has at least 2 more solid years with him, and he's going to make sure he can maximize his money in free agency. Jeff says Chauncey and Osick could play in if necessary. You know, in the preseason, Chauncey played almost exclusively at end, which was interesting. So he's definitely going to play more end. And with the addition of Jordan Phillips, I could definitely see some scenarios where Osa's playing more edge, because Jordan Phillips has the athleticism to penetrate as a 3 tech. And I also think that gives them opportunities to put Micah Parsons at linebacker on obvious passing downs also. So you could potentially have a front four with D-Law, Osa, Phillips, Nealand, or throw in Golston, and then have Micah as a rusher. So there's definitely a lot of games they can play with some of these hybrid guys that we have on the defensive line. I see we got Mendoza joining us. Mendoza, thank you for tuning in. I definitely appreciate you joining the show. Jeff says, I think they will bring a linebacker for special teams. We'll see, and we'll definitely talk about that in a minute. Riker says, I like Chauncey on the end. If they pull Osa out the middle, I will send hate mail to the star. He's definitely proven to be a good player in the interior, but I could see them playing some games with him at edge because I know how much Mike Zimmer loves to play games with the interior of his line to get guys one-on-one matchups on the edge. Kevin saying, I hope D-Law and Nealand solid enough to drop Micah. We need to keep pressures high, but we got to plug the holes in the middle. Yeah, I think we got a couple of people to help us drop Micah. We just talked about Osa. We just talked about Golson. Tyrus Wheat, I think, can give you one or two quality snaps on defense, even though I think he's primarily a special teams guy. We got Chris Hennigan joining us. Thank you for joining. Appreciate you tuning in. Let's see. We got Steven Mozaika joining us from Denton, Texas. So, Steven, thank you for joining us also. Jay Fuentes looks like a new name. So, Jay, thank you for joining. He asked the question, is the D-line going to stop the run, which ate us up last year? I think with the additions of Phillips and Joseph, if they aren't washed up, I think our run defense is going to be much, much better. Add to that the fact that we have actual linebackers who know how to play in the middle of the field and read running lanes. I think we're going to see some major improvements in our run defense. And Chris Hennigan saying, Night Owl Cowboys saying our offense is going to be hard this year. I talked about this during the preseason. I did notice a lot of guys were really stepping up in practices and preseason games. If that transitions into the regular season and CeeDee Lamb stays close to consistent, our offense should definitely be a lot better. Jack Meeker saying, I got to see the double A-gap scheme in action with Micah as a linebacker. That's what I'm hoping these two big tackles are setting up for us, Jack Meeker, because I can see a scenario where you've got 330-pound Linval Joseph lined head up against one guard in the B gap. And then you got 325-pound Jordan Phillips lined up against the other guard in the B gap. And they're both angling inside on the guards. So if I'm the guard and the center's right here, if I've got a 330-pound nose tackle right here, there's no way I can help the center. And same on the other side. So you make the guards have to play the defensive tackles. And then if I'm the center, you put two linebackers right here. The ball is right there. The linebackers are right here. Now the center, who's the most unathletic player on the offensive line, has Micah Parsons right here and let's say Overshown or Leofow right here. And he doesn't know which one is coming. When the ball gets snapped, he has to make a split decision on which way he's turning. And if he chooses wrong, you've got Micah Parsons coming full speed right here, or you've got Overshown going full speed right here, or you have both of them coming full speed, and the center really has to make a decision. That's what the double A-gap scheme can do. And if the center is not doing a shotgun snap and the quarterback's right behind them, the quarterback's not going to have any time. That's one of those key components of a Mike Zimmer scheme. And I feel like that's why those big D tackles were brought in, because of their ability to make those guards have to make a very tough choice in one-on-one matchups. Let's see. Joshua Washington saying, I'd like to see us bring in a veteran corner. We'll talk about that in a minute, Joshua Washington. Thank you for tuning in also. AJ Pondexter saying, I'm glad we got Cook. Jack Meeker saying Mike is huge. This run D, how he calls defense is 9 day to Quinn, definitely. Jay Fuentes saying, I don't want to see Barkley shred us. Well, you got to remember, Jay Fuentes, the Eagles' offensive coordinator is Kellen Moore. We know what a Kellen Moore offense looks like, so we could pretty much predict they're going to run it on first down, they're going to run it on second down, and then on third and long, they're going to try to bail themselves out. So it's going to be pretty predictable. So I don't think Barkley's going to shred us. Maurice White says, I think moving Micah around will, 1, allow him to get pressure based on the scheme, 2, take less of a pounding, pause, and 3, prevent defenses from game planning, hence more sacks with less physical wear and tear. That's exactly what I think also. I think you're going to see him standing up as a linebacker a whole lot more this year to help him stay healthy and not have to take on the big matchups that he had to take on last year. Lee Benson, I'll make a note, and once we get to corner, I'll talk about your question. And the Eagles lost their center. They definitely did. So that's going to affect their run game also. Yeah, I did say pause. I guess you weren't listening to what I just read. All right, so let's get the show back moving. We're at 58 minutes. Let's go to the linebacker position. I see there was a lot of talk about Overshown. So last week, we picked them to keep 5 linebackers. And they did keep 5, but instead of keeping Willie Harvey, they kept Buddy Johnson. Now, Buddy Johnson is a guy that a lot of fans may not know, but former Texas A&M linebacker, been in the league a couple of years, former 4th-round pick. He started his career off with the Steelers. I think he was on the practice squad for a year somewhere else, and he got an opportunity to play here. So Buddy Johnson's not a slouch. He's a very talented player. He's a very smart player, and I think he's going to have an opportunity to make some plays on this defense. Now, Bruiser Burrows, I thought Willie Harvey was going to be the guy also. I am a little disappointed that he was not the guy. But Buddy Johnson, Kevin Okerstrom trying to tap into his inner American gangster and wanting to call him Bumpy Johnson. We'll see if that nickname catches on during the season, Kevin. Jeff asked the question, can he wear the green dot? Honestly, I don't know enough about the player to know if he's a true Mike linebacker. I know he can make some plays. But we'll see. I know Harvey can. And we'll talk about it in a minute. We do have 1 remaining practice squad spot left. I don't know. All right, get your mind out the gutter. I don't even know why we gotta say pause there, Jeff. I'm leave that one alone. All right, Keystone Cowboy saying I'm still greedy for 1 more linebacker. And we'll talk about that in a minute once we talk about the practice squad. Any other comments? Steven Mozaika saying he's on the practice squad. I know we got Mogerson on the practice squad. I don't know if we have Willie Harvey on the practice squad. Jay Fuentes asking the question, do we believe this unit can be balanced or leaning more towards coverage or run stop? I think Jay Fuentes, because of the additions in our front seven, I think we're going to be balanced. But once we get Deron Bland back, I think it's going to be a major shift in stopping the pass. I just feel like looking at the team and how the defense has been constructed under Mike Zimmer, I think the Carl Lawson comment that he made last week, I think that's kind of Mike Zimmer's philosophy. I wouldn't be shocked if he heard Mike Zimmer say that before when he made the comment that you play first and second down so that you can have fun on third down and get after the quarterback. To me, that sounds like a Mike Zimmer comment. So I feel like that's Mike Zimmer's philosophy. You bring in the two big D tackles, you bring in real linebackers, and you play to stop the run. And then on third down, you have a chess piece like a Micah Parsons. You bring in all these defensive ends, and then you get to play some cat and mouse games across the front seven, and you let your secondary, who has a bunch of playmakers in it, get a chance to make some plays on the ball in the air. So I definitely think this is going to be a balanced defense with an emphasis on stopping the run so that they can try to create turnovers on third and longs. But like Terry said, yeah, if we had Bland, I would probably lean more towards coverage. But without Bland, I think it's more like a more balanced defense. And yes, thank you, John Murray. The topic tonight is we're going over the 53-man rosters that we projected last week and comparing them to what the team actually did. Joshua Washington saying this is the best defense Dak has had. From a name and talent standpoint, this is 100% the best defense. I think this is the best defensive tackle group we've had in 10 years. I think this is the best linebacker group we've had in 10 years. Safety, in terms of top to bottom, it may be the best. And when we get Deron Bland back, I think cornerback will probably be the best. So I think you're right, Joshua Washington. This may be the best defense Dak has had because we got a lot of great playmakers on this roster. Jeff saying hopefully the safeties won't have to support in the run. I hope not either. But when you've got guys like Marquise Bell, Wanye Thomas, and Donovan Wilson and strong safety, they're going to want to help on the run. So we may not need them to, but those guys like to hit people. So I wouldn't be shocked if we see a lot of those cover one concepts where those safeties start to drift into the box and either come down or back up. Another component of a Mike Zimmer scheme. Bruiser Burrow saying the defense should be able to stop the run, something we haven't been able to do in a few years. Well, we are bringing We're bringing in the Cleveland Browns, and we're also bringing in the Pittsburgh Steelers within the first 4 weeks. So if we are going to stop the run, those teams are going to find out if we can because they love to run the ball. John Jennings, no. Stephon Gilmore is not on the defense. He was a free agent. He actually signed a deal a couple of weeks ago, so he's now unavailable. All right, let's go to the cornerback position since I see you guys are starting to kind of lean to that spot. Another thing I love about this show is when we talk about one topic, you guys always help me to transition into the next topic. Just one of those great things and one of the reasons why this show is fueled by you guys, because you guys definitely know how to lead the conversation in the right directions. So looking at the cornerback position, we said last week we would keep 6 corners, and eventually we did. So we got the first 5 right: Diggs, Carson, Lewis, Booth, Mukwamu. At this point in time, Deron Bland was hurt, so he's on IR. The one we got wrong was that 6th position. So the team decided to keep CJ Goodwin when we expected them to keep Eric Scott, the former 5th round pick from last year's draft. So this position, and Kevin Okerstrom, thank you for joining us. Appreciate you tuning in. Hope that you join us next Wednesday for the first regular season show of the season. So this one was a surprise because CJ Goodwin, for one, is a veteran. And if you guys heard us talk last week, teams are able to manipulate veterans on the roster. You can essentially cut them, and then you can pretty much tell them don't answer the phone for 24 to 48 hours. And after the roster gets set, you can either put that veteran on the practice squad, kind of like what we did with Carl Lawson, or you can find a way to sneak them back on the 53-man roster. So the fact that the team decided not to cut Goodwin when they've cut him for the past 2 years, that was a very interesting move for them to keep him on the roster. And something that gives me an indication of why, when you look at the 53-man roster, they did not list Goodwin as a defensive back. They listed him as a special teams player. And just like Mendoza said, he's our Matthew Slater. He's seen as one of the best special teamers in the NFL. My opinion, they probably got word that somebody was going to pick him up if he was cut, and they were going to offer him more money than we would. So the team decided, you know what, we're not going to take a chance of losing our best special teamer by far. We're going to just keep him on the roster and just let him take a roster spot. But you never can tell what could happen. We do have to make a spot when CeeDee Lamb returns. Like you guys said, CJ Goodwin is definitely on a very short list of possible guys who could be cut to make room for CeeDee Lamb's return. Jerry on the Move Holters looks like another new name, so thank you for joining us. He says, I would prefer to use Mukuamu instead of Carson in the absence of Bland, primarily because he would be a free agent. Carson is a rookie and talented, but I've been liking Mukuamu as much as Thomas and Bell since he came to Dallas. Interesting point, Jerry. We've talked about that for several weeks. We had discussion about it last week about whether or not he make the team. I love Mukuamu. If you guys follow me from the old show, I talked about him throughout the entire draft process as one of my top cornerbacks. I was shocked that he went as late as he went, and I was even more shocked that he was available for Dallas. But the issue with Mukuamu is he's had numerous opportunities to take advantage of the position he's in to get more playing time. 2 years ago, Deron Bland was a rookie. Mukuamu had been here for 2 years. Bland leapfrogged him and got playing time. By the way, Jordan Lewis got hurt. So we had an opening in our cornerback starting lineup that could have been taken advantage of by Mukuamu if he was able to. Then last year, Trayvon Diaz gets hurt, misses the season. The first year, we can say, okay, Deron Bland's a natural slot guy. Mukuamu's a bigger outside corner. We understand why Bland got the spot. But last year, Diaz gets hurt. We have Gilmore. We have Bland. Even with that, Mukuamu still didn't get any significant playing time. The team chose to use Nashawn Wright. Now, for me, I never liked Wright as a player. I thought it was a terrible pick. But it's just I don't know if the right word is concerning, but it's just an interesting point of note that we had an opening at outside corner and Mukuamu had been here for 3 years and they still didn't give him opportunities. So it makes me kind of feel like maybe he's in the doghouse with somebody. Maybe he's not performing in practice the way The coaches think he should. And we have a great defensive backs coach. Nobody can question that. So the fact that we have a great defensive backs coach who we thought emphasized corners like that, and at the time we had a defensive coordinator who loved big, tall corners, he still wasn't getting playing time. I guess it was a little concerning. I'm glad to see he's on the roster. I'm glad to see he gets another opportunity, and he should definitely get some opportunities to play as a third year veteran. But I'm just gonna caution and temper my expectations just because of history. But I'm definitely glad to see he gets one more chance. And Jerry, I'm a special teams guy. You know I talk about this all the time. The three most important positions on special teams are punter, kicker, gunner, jammer, personal protection. And Goodwin is the gunner and the jammer, and he's probably the best in the league. All right, I see we got Amanda joining us, the co-creator of the DC4L group. Amanda will be joining us next week for the first episode of the regular season. And like she said, she has some amazing prizes lined up for next week. We're going to be doing several giveaways throughout the show, and Amanda will be on the show to break down the first week's matchup against the Cleveland Browns. So make sure you guys come back and join us next week for an opportunity to win. All you have to do is watch the show, keep leaving those great questions and comments that you're leaving, and also answer a trivia question about the Dallas Cowboys. And the first one who answers the question will get an amazing prize. All right. So we're down to our last position. We're at an hour, 12 minutes. The views are still holding pretty steady. So thank you guys for sticking with us. The last position we have to talk about is the safety position. Should go pretty quick because last week we said they would keep 4. These are the 4 guys that we chose. These are the 4 guys that they kept. Now, I was a little disappointed that they took a chance on Julius Wood. He was a highly regarded undrafted free agent. He showed some good flashes in preseason. I think he had 2 interceptions. May have been 1 interception, but I think it was 2. He had interceptions during preseason. He's a hard hitter, sure tackler, good special teamer. I thought they may find a way to try to sneak him on the roster as a 5th safety. Unfortunately, they couldn't do it. Another team picked him up for their roster, so he's gone. But I feel very good about all 4 safeties we have. I really feel like any one of these safeties could be a starter. You could even flip it and have Bell and Thomas first, Wilson and Hooker off the bench, and I'm still happy. So we have a very talented safety group with very few holes, and I'm looking forward to seeing how these guys produce in the regular season. All right, Jay Fuentes says you're out also, so thank you for joining. Definitely appreciate that. We've got Jerry Holter saying he's tapping in all the way from Bolivia. So, Jerry, thank you for tuning in. Definitely appreciate it. And I'm glad that you are enjoying the content. I hope you continue to join us throughout the regular season as we give you our thoughts on the matchups for every week's game. So that's all I got in terms of 53-man roster. But before I go, we have to talk about the practice squad. So as of right now, we have 16 practice squad positions. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the practice squad rules. So they took the number up from 14 to 16. John Murray, thank you for joining. Looking forward to seeing you next week. I mean, kicker, punter, and holder are pretty self-explanatory. I didn't want to go through that, even though I am a special teams guy. But we know who they are. We know they're going to be here. So, real quick, preseason and practice squad. So last year, we only had 14 practice squad positions. They added 2 more this year. And on those practice squad spots, the team is allowed to have 6 veteran players. Prior to 2020, no team could have veteran players on the practice squad. So that's what makes us capable of having guys like a Carl Lawson or a Dalvin Cook on the practice squad. Now, of those 6 veterans, 4 of them have to have 5 years or less of NFL service. And then the other 2 can have as many years as you want. So those are 2 wrinkles you have to remember with the practice squad. And I made a post about this on Facebook earlier because we were trying to explain all last week that guys like a Dalvin Cook or a Carl Lawson or even a Linval Joseph may go to the practice squad, and people were telling us, no, that's not going to happen. Well, I'm going to give you 2 scenarios, and I put these on Facebook. Let's say you're Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook has been basically sitting at home since last January. It's now August. No teams picked up the phone. So he has 2 options. He can stay at home. He can continue to train on his own, pay his own trainer, pay for his own facility, not receive any compensation, have to cover his own medical, have to cover his own food. And if a team wants to try him out, he has to fly to different locations to meet with NFL decision makers. That's option 1. Option 2 is he can join a practice squad. Now, if he joins a practice squad, the team is going to cover his medical. The team is going to cover his food while he's at the facility. The team is going to cover his trainers. He doesn't have to pay for a facility because he's at the Cowboys facility, one of the tops in the NFL. And instead of having to travel around the country to meet with NFL decision makers, he's got them right there in front of him every day. And on top of that, he still gets an opportunity to possibly play in an NFL game. And then the cherry on top, he gets paid $25,000 a week to practice. So if you were a veteran who was unsigned, would you rather sit at home and wait for the phone to ring, spend your own money and resources and not get anything back, or go to a team, get paid to practice, and take advantage of their food, their medical, their facilities, their trainers, and get a chance to possibly play in the game? To me, it's a no-brainer. And that's why you're going to see a lot more veterans who are sitting at home sign the practice squads. And I feel like we're starting to see that more and more as the rules continue to change. And yeah, it's not a bad deal. Some people think, well, oh, it's just disrespectful to be on a practice squad. But when you look at it, like you said, you also save a little face because technically you are on an NFL team. You're just not dressing out on Sundays. Now, for a player that's a possible Hall of Famer, like a Patrick Peterson or Stephon Gilmore or somebody like that, I would be shocked if they sign on a practice squad. But for a guy like a Dalvin Cook who's trying to get one more good year, I could definitely see him doing it. Bruiser Burrows saying Aubrey will break the longest field goal record this year. I mean, if he did it in a preseason game, they're going to give him an opportunity at some point this year to break one of those records. Lee Benson with the quote of the night, practice squad is better than no squad. 100% agree. Go get that money. Go practice with a team, get paid for it. So let's take a look at the practice squad really quick, and we'll go through this, and then we'll get out of here. And the views and the comments and the engagement on fire today. We're five likes away from 100. So if you haven't hit the like button yet, please hit that like button. Help us get to 100 likes on this show. Views were ridiculous. So thank you guys for all of your support in tonight's show. Money is green any way you get it, 100%. So Jeff, good question. Does the salary change if he gets called up? No, the salary does not change if he gets called up. But the good thing is, let's say, going back to practice squad rules, and we got over 100. So thank you guys for those 6 people who did hit the like button. Thank you. I really appreciate that. So practice squad, you can get called up from the practice squad 2 times as a veteran. After the third time, the team has to sign you to the roster. Now, NFL rules state if a team signs you to their active roster from a practice squad, that you have to get paid as a veteran for 3 game checks. So let's say the team brings them up from the practice squad twice, and then they want to bring them up a third time. They have to sign them to the roster. If they sign them to the roster for 1 week and then cut them and put them back on the practice squad, they have to pay him for 3 weeks as an NFL player. So if that does happen, he will get a pay increase. And I do expect that to happen. Or he plays 2 weeks of preseason with us and somebody poaches him off of our practice squad and they sign him to the roster. So either way for him is going to be a win-win. They should call up Cooks for the Niners game. I'll be honest, out Witherspoon. I think they're going to call him up for the probably weeks 2 and 3 or 3 and 4. So we'll probably use up all of our call-ups by the time we get to the Niners. At that point, he'll either be on our roster or on somebody else's roster, I think. So definitely, I think he'll be here. But how he'll be here, that'll be another question that we'll find out another day. But good question, Jeff. Salaries do change if they get called up more than twice. All right, let's go through the practice squad a little bit, and then we'll get out of here with an hour 22 minutes. There were not a lot of surprises on the practice squad. Well, actually, I was surprised to see Josh Ball clear waivers. He was rated as the 3rd best offensive lineman in preseason. And the fact that he was rated that highly and he has position flex to play tackle, I'm shocked he cleared waivers, but glad he's here. That could happen also, Jeff. I'll cover IR in a second after I talk about practice squad. Jalen Cropper, he was another one of those veteran guys. He has 4 years in the league, so the team cut him. He has a rapport with Dak. They probably told him, don't answer the phone. Give us 24 hours. We'll find a way to get you on the roster at some point this year. So glad to see him back. Malik Davis has been on the practice squad his entire career in the NFL. So I'm pleasantly surprised to see him back. Kemen Hall, cornerback. I'm glad we have him because we don't have any backup nickelbacks. So I would not be surprised to see him get called up a couple times during the year. Wide receiver Kelvin Harmon had a very good preseason. Made a lot of great catches on some bad throws. Big-bodied guy. So if we need another outside guy, wouldn't be shocked to see him get called up. Imani Johnson, safety. I see I got a couple of subscribers joining on my phone, so thank you guys for subscribing. Imani Johnson, rookie. Another one of those guys in the Marquise Bell, Wanye Thomas mode. So I expect to see him stay on the roster and develop. Carl Lawson, we talked about him, the veteran. Brock Mogensen, rookie linebacker, another Mike guy. I think if something happens and we need a linebacker, he's probably going to get called up a little bit. Dakota Shipley is our number 3 center, so glad to see him get brought back. And then Nick Vigil, a linebacker, another Mike Zimmer guy. I don't expect to see him get called up to the roster. I see this one as more of a Mike Zimmer calling in a favor for one of his guys from Minnesota and Cincinnati. Let one of his old veterans get a paycheck for a couple of weeks. So I just expect him to be a practice squad guy collecting a paycheck and probably never getting used in a game. Damon Johnson asking why let Julius Woods go though. I was shocked as well. I think the cornerback position hurt us and defensive line. So I think we had to go long at those positions, and because of that, we had to go short somewhere else. The position to go short at was either safety or linebacker, and I guess they thought Buddy Johnson was a better choice than Julius Wood. You could agree or disagree with that. I probably kind of disagree with it, but that's the decision the team made. There's always going to be a guy that we hate to see leave, but that's just a part of the NFL. Glad to see the guy got an opportunity somewhere else. Damon Johnson asked what happened to Harris. Let me know what Harris you're talking about. Are you talking about Darius Harris? If you are, Darius Harris is another linebacker. I would have to look him up. Now, I know he's from my part of the country. He's a Mississippi kid. He played high school, probably less than 10 miles from where I'm at right now. So glad to see another Mississippi kid get an opportunity to play. I'm shocked he's on the practice squad. I would have thought that spot would have been reserved for Willie Harvey. But maybe something else will happen to Harvey. All right, so that's all I have for tonight's show. Dalvin Cook is projected to join the practice squad. When he joins, we'll have one more position left on the practice squad. So I know we got a lot of draft experts in here, a lot of football experts in here. Let me know who you guys think will be the 16th practice squad player. I'm curious to see what your thoughts are. I have a couple of thoughts about who I think those guys could be. So I'm going to give you a couple of conspiracy theories and see if you guys think that could happen also. Jeff says Donovan Smith, the left tackle. That's definitely an option. I honestly, I doubt it's him though. Did they keep the NC lineman? I'm assuming you're talking about Nathan Thomas, if I'm not mistaken. Tony would not join a practice squad. His ego would not let him do it. I just don't see it. I follow Tony since his time at Ole Miss. He's a arrogant prick, and nobody likes him. To me, that's one of his biggest problems in the NFL, and why he can't stay on with the team, and why his chemistry's off. I do not see him being the type of guy who would join a practice squad. Mendoza says probably a D tackle. I wanted a safety after the Woods lost. Could see corner. So I have a couple of conspiracy theories about who that last spot can be, and I'm going to throw a couple of them out there. Noah Brown was cut. Jeff, you just took one of them. Sterling Shepard was cut. A veteran wide receiver, can play inside, outside. Let's say, heaven forbid, something happened with Lamb, missing practice, hamstring gets tight, he may have to miss a week. You sign a guy like Sterling Shepard who has a lot of injury concerns, but you hope he can put it together healthy for 1 week. So I could see Sterling Shepard being a possible option. And Damon Johnson says Noah Brown was signed by Washington. Of course he was signed by Washington. Might as well call them the Washington Cowboys. But Sterling Shepard is one guy. Another guy I could see, I think it's unlikely unless we kind of gave him a deal that you sign with the practice squad for a week and then we'll get you on the roster. Xavier Howard, cornerback, coming off an injury. Name kind of got tarnished a little bit last year in terms of his ability to cover. I think he's a Texas boy. He was rumored to be here for quite a while. I could see them holding that spot to clear things up with him. Has a lot of kids, definitely needs a paycheck. So I could definitely see a guy like Xavier Howard. I would also say Patrick Peterson just because he has the Minnesota Vikings ties. But I don't see Peterson as the type of guy who was signed to a practice squad. Yeah, that's what I thought he was. I thought he was from Texas. Fifth Ward, Houston, Texas. Thank you, Trey. So yeah, I can definitely see a guy like a Sterling Shepard or Xavier Howard being the guy we're holding that last spot to. So it's kind of interesting that the spot is left open and it hasn't been filled. So they have a plan in place to fill that spot. So I'm thinking Sterling Shepard, Xavier Howard. A third option would be maybe since waivers have cleared and teams have put their roster together, maybe when Lamb comes back, they cut a CJ Goodwin and they go ahead and put him in that spot. So one of the reasons teams like to play that 53-man roster game, and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, between Monday and Wednesday morning, there were 1,000 NFL players who were eligible to be on teams. So from those 1,000 players, teams got to shuffle through them and mix around, sign guys to their roster, sign guys to their practice squads. So by the time you get to Monday, this coming Monday, pretty much every team is going to have a group of guys that they feel comfortable with, and this is my team going into week one. So I feel like some teams try to manipulate the 53-man roster so that they can try to get through that time between cuts and when real football starts. So if a team feels like, to use one of Jerry Jones' lines, when a team feels like we like our guys and a guy like a CJ Goodwin comes up, they may be less hesitant to cut a guy that's already on their roster to make room for somebody else who just got cut somewhere else. So I think teams like to play around a little bit with certain roster spots. Same thing with waivers. They may have a guy who's a rookie who would have to clear waivers, but if you wait till Monday and teams have already started practicing, maybe they think if I cut my guy on Monday, nobody will pick him up because they don't want to drop anybody they've already basically committed to. So just pay attention to stuff like that when it comes to roster manipulation. So Jeff says wild card Martavius Bryant. The fact that Washington picked up Bryant makes me think that Bryant was more of a Dan Quinn favor than the Cowboys wanting to look at him, because we signed him last year. We didn't give him any chances to make the roster. And then we let him go, and then Washington picks him up. To me, that makes me feel like maybe that was kind of a Dan Quinn favor, kind of like how I feel about Nick Vigil with us right now. So it's definitely a wild card. I don't think that'll be the guy. I feel like they're holding that roster spot for a veteran that they're still in negotiations with, but I could be mistaken. Chris Hennigan, Night Owl Cowboy, definitely appreciate you tuning in. Hope you continue to join us moving forward. Got a great show coming next week, sorry. And Mendoza saying Sterling Shepard coming here would be cool for him since his dad played here. You know Jerry Jones loves those Cowboys connections. That's another reason I said that, Mendoza, because you get a veteran who can play the slot. He has Cowboys ties, and Jerry always loves a good storyline. So definitely got to pay attention to Sterling Shepard as a possible option. All right, well, that's pretty much all I have for the show. Views are starting to go down a little bit, but they were still pretty consistent. So thank you guys for joining us for another episode of the Fifth Quarter Podcast. Next week, we will have Amanda Foster, the co-creator of the DC4L Facebook group, joining us as we kick off our regular season matchup with the Cleveland Browns. We're going to have a lot of great prizes next week, as Amanda promised. All you guys got to do is watch the show, leave those questions in comments, and answer a few trivia questions, and you're going to leave with some great prizes. So thank you for joining. Be sure to join us next Wednesday, 8:30 Central Standard Time, Fifth Quarter Podcast, DC4L Facebook and YouTube channels, Bluff City Cowboys Facebook and YouTube channels. Once again, if you haven't done so already, just take a few seconds, hit that link, hit that subscribe button. You will be doing me a big favor, and you will continue to grow Fifth Quarter Podcast Nation. So thank you guys for joining. As always, the show is fueled by the fans, and as always, you guys brought it. We'll see you guys next week, and let's go Cowboys on our path to another Lombardi trophy. See you guys on Wednesday. Oh, one more thing. Once again, before I go, I almost forgot. Last thing, I will be live with Charlie sorry. I just started itching all of a sudden. Apologize for that. So yeah, I will be live with Charlie on Establish the Pass podcast tomorrow afternoon, 8 p.m. Central Time. We will be continuing the conversation on the 53-man roster. We'll talk CeeDee Lamb contracts. We'll talk about Dalvin Cook. Charlie will give you his positions on all of these things. And trust me, if you've never seen or heard Charlie before, it's definitely going to be a very good and very interesting show. So make sure you guys tune in tomorrow. You can find it on my Bluff City Cowboys Facebook and YouTube, or you can find Charlie at Establish the Pass. Be sure to tune in for that. And as always, let's go Cowboys. If you can't join me tomorrow, I'll see you guys next Wednesday, 8:30 Central Standard Time for the Fifth Quarter Podcast.